Well, it appears the so-called shy Trump voters are not so shy anymore. After his big election win at the start of the month, people around the country are celebrating. And that includes people that were previously quietly keeping their support for Donald Trump under wraps. Axios is reporting that secret Trump voters are having post-election coming out parties. I know that has also been happening right here in Australia. We're seeing more people proudly wearing their MAGA hats while they're out and about, flying Trump flags and posting their support on social media. Now it appears after Trump's clear win, voters in blue cities like New York and LA have a bit more courage and a bit more confidence to show off their support for the president-elect. They're done with being told they can't vote a certain way, and whether that's coming from the left-wing media or people with Trump derangement syndrome. But residents in Liberal areas have told Axios that more Trump signs have been going up after the election result. How's that? Donald Trump improved on his 2016 and 2020 margins in almost every state, including Liberal areas, and people are celebrating this red wave. We're also seeing athletes demonstrate their support for Donald Trump, taking part in the signature Trump dance while the cameras are on them.
And coming through, Smith! Zadarius Smith with a sack.
23 yards for the rookie.
We'll check the flag here.
He did the Trump dance. He did the Trump dance. Spinning back kick to the body.
Spinning back kick.
Followed by the Trump dance.
It is being described as MAGA mania. UFC boss Dana White has spoken out about how it feels in America right now.
Well, if you saw the election, the entire country relates with Trump right now. Won all the swing states. I think that the whole country, it feels like somebody hit the reset button.
Daniel Wild from the IPA joined the Rita Panahi show for his take on the key people in Donald Trump's team.
Now let's take a look at this picture from yesterday's UFC event. It's President-elect Donald Trump. You can see there the world's richest man, Elon Musk, Tulsi Gabbard, and RFK Jr. This was at Madison Square Garden for UFC 309. I'll be talking to Alex Stein about this event a little bit later, but have a look at that picture, Dan, and marvel at the fact that every single person there was a former Democrat. This political realignment that we are seeing in America is extraordinary. We're seeing signs of it here, not just signs. I would say the last 3 elections, there's been clear evidence of it. We've seen it in the UK. And it's stunning to see these people who are going to be making up Trump's administration were all once part of the Democrats' tent.
Well, that's right, Rita. I mean, the Republican Party is now the National Unity Party. They've got people on all sides of politics that are in their administration. And it's amazing that Trump has been the one that has actually brought, or is now starting to bring the country together with, as you say, former Democrats having key roles, or Democrat voters and supporters having key roles in his administration. This is the realignment, which is those who used to be Democrats, and you could probably put Joe Rogan in that camp as well, or at least someone who was on the left and said, well, you know, I was on the left because I support free speech and civil liberties and so forth. But then they lived through COVID, they lived through the lockdowns. They saw what happened in California, you know, a Democrat state, and in New York, a Democrat state. They went the furthest in imposing lockdowns and curfews and mandates on their citizens. And so that's driven a lot of this, you know, particularly when you talk about RFK Jr. and his concerns about health and the medical bureaucracy and so forth. So, look, we're living through a fascinating time, but through a time of immense opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity to make our societies better. You mentioned the UK and Australia, so we've got a way to go in Australia, but I'm very positive about what the future brings.
Let's have a look at this ridiculous rant from alleged comic John Oliver. He thinks that there is no safety threat in having male students, male bodies compete against females, something that is obviously false. There's plenty of examples of it. And it was a huge election issue, Dan. This was a significant election issue in the US presidential election. It should be an issue here. But let's have a listen to John Oliver first.
And it was frustrating to see the Harris campaign fail to formulate a response, especially because It's pretty easy to do. Watch, I'll do it for you right now. As we've discussed before, there are vanishingly few trans girls competing in high schools anywhere. Even if there were more, trans kids, like all kids, vary in athletic ability, and there is no evidence they pose any threat to safety or fairness. It is very weird for you to be so focused on this subject. And finally, if you genuinely want to address the biggest concern for most girls who play high school sports, you'd be less worried about this and more about the creepy assistant volleyball coach who keeps liking their posts on Instagram.
Oh dear, attempts at humour, but just basically everything he said there was a lie. Even J.K. Rowling, who likes Oliver, who's worked with him, went on X and posted a lengthy fact check. And this is part of what she posted. She said, according to the UN, female athletes have lost nearly 900 medals to trans-identified men competing against them in women's sporting categories. Girls have been ousted from teams to make way for boys. Women have suffered serious injury playing against trans-identified men. It was a lengthy post. I won't read out the whole thing, but it just proves again, Dan, that the likes of John Oliver are determined to stay ignorant on this issue. And they just don't understand why it matters to people, why parents care about this, why people who care about fairness are invested in this issue.
Well, exactly right. I mean, you've got to perform all these mental gymnastics to convince yourself that there's no physical difference between men and women. Of course there is. I mean, it's just common sense. It's as plain as the nose on your face. And it was a big election issue in the US. I mean, Megyn Kelly, came out and endorsed Trump right at the end. I think it was in Pennsylvania she did that, saying that Trump was going to protect women because he's going to deal with this issue, to deal with men in women's sports. So it was an issue there. It is an issue in Australia, all around the Western world. Everybody knows it. And of course, we want to have empathy and have fairness towards those who choose to change their identity and so forth. But you've got to draw the line somewhere. And this is where you draw the line. You draw the line when women are in physical danger of being harmed or hurt by men who are in their spaces. That's where the line is as a society. It's pretty clear that that's where the vast majority of us believe it should be. And I don't understand why it's so difficult for the establishment to understand that this is an issue that parents are concerned about and it must be dealt with. In Australia, we do have some people, Claire Chandler, Alex Antic and others in the Senate who have been speaking out. But I hope this becomes more of a mainstream issue in the lead up to our election here early next year.